was able to highlight insight that only 4% of women actually feel beautiful. And we are our own worst critics. Not only that, the campaign was able to embody a social message of self-confidence that gave the viewers, the people that watched that commercial, the reason to share it with others, which was very powerful. This campaign was shared in 110 countries and was translated into 25 languages. It had resonated massively around the world. What was amazing about it, though, was the fact that that insight was deeply human that they were able to find. So the insight wasn't from South America, from North America, it wasn't from Europe. It was deeply human. It connected women around the world. It transcended cultures and borders. So that was pretty powerful. And given that Dove stands behind the Real Beauty campaign, that connection was even more powerful. But finding the insight is half the battle. Then there's the execution and the delivery of those messages. As brand relies on consistent delivery of those messages across an array of different touchpoints, and consumers no longer think about products separate from advertising, from consumer experience, user experience, shopper experience. They think of it as an overall product experience. They think of it in a very holistic way. And given that organizations are structured in such a way that every function is separated, marketing, research, R&D, all the teams are separated and responsible for those elements of that brand performance, the consistency of those brand messages may be hindered. So how do you change that? How do you connect those dots? Well, you create an environment that essentially builds the horizontal communication and knowledge sharing, and provides opportunities for knowledge sharing. Because it's very important to make sure that the brand story is consistent with each interaction that consumer has. Because ideally, the structure of the company would follow the structure of that consumer brand experience, which is very much connected and dependent. And this is important because a brand is the sum of all its experiences. And a brand story is told with each and every interaction that the consumer has, whether it's on one touch point or multiple touch points. And those are the stories that the consumer can really hear. So the trick is to make sure that the organizational structure ensures that there's a consistent delivery of those messages. But given that advertising may fall under marketing, and shopper insights or shopper experience as a whole may fall under sales, you can see where the disconnect may come in. But after all, the ability to fully evaluate your brand health and really understand your consumer experience requires an evaluation of all the touch points from all the angles. Because, as you can see on this picture, every angle matters. So if your brand suffers in any one of the elements, you may not know that if you don't do that full 360 evaluation. The bottom line is this: in the world where consumer is ever connected with news, with media, with each other, with work, a brand certainly has a tough job. The trick is to successfully intersect the message with the consumer in the right context and in the right and a very engaging way to make sure that the brand and the consumer are connected. So how do you do that, given that organizational structure may impede this at times? Well, companies can be resourceful. They can find solutions that don't necessarily require the entire restructuring of the company. They can find a way to increase that horizontal connections within the company. Our team, for example, Clarteza, frequently gets involved in making those connections within the data across disciplines and between people. We allow and facilitate for seamlessness where the silos may stand. So companies can be resourceful. Because it is about connecting the dots. Connecting the dots with the consumer and the right message. And those that help execute those messages consistently across all the touch points. Let's face it, navigating through today's consumer landscape is like a performance. It really is like a dance. It's a delicate balance of establishing the right connection with the consumer, with consistency, with consistent delivery of content across all touch points. And it all comes from inside the brand with the right story, and inside the organization with consistent delivery of those messages. But if you get this right, if you get these elements right, you will be able to create an experience that will elevate you and your brand. Thank you.
Questions for Meg?
Yes.
You were talking about how companies need to be resourceful, so their structures don't impede but enhance. And you operate at the intersection of the data, the consumer, the organization. Can you give us some examples of work you've done where you didn't have the luxury of blowing up the client's organization, starting over, and what did you do and how did you fix it?
Absolutely. So one of the situations we were involved in was the brand health of the company was suffering, and they didn't really know what that was and where the disconnect was happening. So our team came in and, number one, reviewed all the data they had. You know, people and companies do a lot of research and they collect a lot of data. It's the issue they have is more with being able to look at the data and being able to synthesize it and see what it is that they've learned. So we were able to come in, review everything they had, synthesize it, and then create cross-departmental workshops across teams with sales, with distribution, with R&D, with research and marketing to really understand where the disconnect in the brand health was taking place. And when you have people working together, when you know that every one of those functions is working towards something bigger, they're much more inspired to think outside of their own expertise and be able to collaborate with others to create that connectedness. So that was important. Yes.
You talked about the importance of consistent delivery of content. And I know earlier today during the big data session, we also heard about the ability to create differentiated customer experiences based on data. So could you just talk a little bit about how the notion of differentiated customer experiences intersects with the work you do?
Differentiation comes, we observe differentiation when we review the data and the research. We see which brands stand out versus the ones that are not. And the ones that stand out are able to create that emotional connection between the consumer and the brand. Those are the ones that are able to create that long-lasting relationship that then translates into sales and into profits for the company.
Meg, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misinterpreting, or Zach, you can correct me too, but I think one important difference to understand, or to, I guess, recognize is, in the big data discussion, and just recently when it was mentioned before, I think what's happening is we're using data, whether we get it directly from a human or through big data, to manipulate the actual function, the actual experience, the literal experience that somebody is going through. That doesn't change the brand story.
Right.
So what I believe Meg's message was is that regardless of the touch point, regardless of the platform, the brands, we actually do, right? A brand is the sum of all of its experiences,
right,
regardless of that touch point, and that story doesn't change. And so one of the challenges we all face in business is these organizational structures that sometimes prevent us from, quite frankly, just collaborating better, right, and ensuring that our brand story is remaining consistent across departments. Is that,
exactly
am I anywhere near the right
No,
path?
this is exactly what my message is, yes.
Thanks for lobbing me that softball thing. Get to 20.
From a Zach to a Zach.
Yeah, it's a thing. We have to. Good stuff. Other questions? Well, a big round of applause. Thank you again.